What is up, Ascenders? You're now listening to Awaken, a show in which we dive into some expansive conversations to assist you in your ascension process. My name is Bryan Henry. I'm the founder of Together We Ascend and the Ascend Academy, a community of awakened leaders who are coming together to ascend together. On Awaken, I invite on some of the most interesting teachers that I've come across on my path in the space of spiritual growth and personal transformation, who join us to share with us their wisdom and their experience to help you ascend your consciousness and actualize your highest purpose and potential. But this is just the beginning, because if you're looking to go deeper and see the importance in coming together with other like-hearted souls in the intention of, ascending together, then I invite you to check us out at the Ascend Academy. As an activated member of the Academy, you'll get access to live classes and events happening every single month, many with some of the teachers that we have on our show, who you'll get the chance to interact with and learn from live, as well as from, of course, our fellow ascenders. You'll also get access to our growing library of masterclasses, all on ascension-related content. And if you're curious, but you're not yet ready to commit, we now do offer a free membership to our platform, as well as a 30-day free trial for our activated one. So if you're hearing the call to unite and you are ready to accelerate your process, I invite you to head on over to academy.togetherweascend.com to activate your membership and become a part of our community. But now let's dive into another episode of Awaken. This one is with Andra Vișan. Andra Visan is an expert of the Dreamspell Calendar, which has been inspired by the Mayan Calendar. And I've had her on the podcast before. She joined me for episode 57. And in that episode, we opened up a conversation that, in this one, we're about to take deeper. Because in this episode, Andra's here to support us in evolving our understanding of what time really is, so that we too can evolve our consciousness. You're about to hear Andra share about how society's dominating concept of a linear time is limiting us, and how the Gregorian calendar, the calendar that is most widely used in our world today, is in fact keeping us from being in harmony with nature and with ourselves, as well as from living in a higher state of consciousness. I know that the idea of our calendar being broken and needing to be changed might seem far-fetched to some, but that just speaks to how deeply embedded this is in our collective consciousness. And in this conversation, you're about to hear how evolving beyond this may be an essential piece to our ascension process. Now, pointing out a problem doesn't do us much good if a solution isn't provided. But fortunately, Andra is also here to share with us an alternative that, quite frankly, I'm starting to believe isn't just a better one, but is also bringing to us an essential piece to humanity's evolution. And so you're going to be invited into this more expanded perspective and be provided with guidance around how you can begin to apply this understanding while still operating in the modern world today, so that you yourself can begin to step into these higher states of awareness and continue to lead our collective in the shift that we're in the midst of. Ascenders, this is my conversation with Andra Visan. Andra, I want to thank you for joining me again for what I know is going to be an amazing conversation. It always is with you.
Thank you. Thank you also for the invitation. It's a joy to be here.
So here's where I want to kick things off. You, without knowing it, have set me on a journey actually, and perhaps it's best shared as a remembrance, because as you know, we had this podcast originally scheduled to record last week,
Mhm.
and it's crazy to think how much of a different vantage point I am having this conversation with you now than I would have if we had it last week. And a large part to that, you don't know this, is because in preparing for our conversation and looking into more of your content, you got me thinking about a few things. You got me thinking about my relationship with time.
Mm.
You see, I've to sum up, have been on both ends of the extreme, using that calendar to the T, with every little thing kind of plugged in there with not a single gap in between, just, scheduled to the T. And then I've gone off in the other direction of complete flow. I'm not going to look at the calendar. I'm just going to trust my intuition, and whatever I want to do in the moment, I'm going to do that. After looking into your content and just kind of considering how I've been interacting with time and thinking about time, it somewhat inspired me to lessen my attachment, my grip to how I have been being.
Mm.
While I haven't been so far off in the direction of scheduling everything to T, I've been a little bit attached to this needs to happen at this time. This is what happens at this time. And even in just the last week of kind of letting go of that a little bit,
Uh-huh.
I feel so much more at peace. I feel so
Mm.
much more at ease. I feel like I'm being more present with the moment and allowing for just spontaneous magic to take place. And I gotta say, I've been enjoying it. So thank you for supporting me in this remembrance. I thought it was
My pleasure.
yeah, I felt like that was the best place to start. So with
Mhm.
that being said, I want to ask you, your understanding of time is beyond what most people's concept of time is. So I'm just gonna be very general here. What is time?
Well, this is actually a question that I love asking at the beginning of my workshops because everybody gives a different answer. Like there's no recipe for explaining time. Even scientists have a hard time defining time. I actually remember reading a very beautiful book by Carlo Rovelli, I think that's how you pronounce the name, an Italian physicist who wrote a book, The Order of Time. And he speaks very beautifully and poetically about this concept of time and how we interact with it, how we relate to it. Because in the end, time is something very personal. We cannot define time in the way it is measured nowadays, with the ticking of the clock and the blocks in our calendar and stuff like that. It's beyond those things. And time being something internal that we perceive through our inner world, we can kind of say that time is the dimension of our mind. This is where it happens within the neurons inside our brain. The notion of past is actually recorded inside of our brain, and we use those past experiences to kind of like try to make a sense of our present, to try to plan our future. But again, it's something inside of us that we perceive based on our level of awareness. Because, for example, in this very busy society that we live in, where we don't even have time for ourselves, we're always running, we're always doing things. This keeps us in a state of alertness. And this way, time has a completely different flow compared to if we were, let's say, living in nature, like, the indigenous tribes do. They have a totally different perception about time. But because we're in this fast-paced rhythm, everything is, progressing in this fast-paced rhythm that we don't really comprehend what is going on inside of us. And I love this fact that for different people in the same space, let's say in a classroom, like I'm sure we've all experienced this when we're at school. Let's say I have a hard time with math and maybe my colleague just loves math. For him, that hour of, learning about mathematics is going to be like, a flash, and he's going to be like, oh, I want more information. But for me, because I'm not such a big fan of math, it would be a very slow paced hour, and I'd keep looking at the clock and minutes would turn to hours and things like that. And also something very interesting is that the more we slow down, the more time expands, and I've played a lot with this perception of time in these last years, especially since working with the calendar. I feel like I'm in this timelessness space where it's very hard for me to, something that might have happened last week. Maybe I feel it's happened like a month ago because so many things went in between that middle of those days, and it's a concept that is based on, what's happening inside our being. It's not something based on the things that we do, even though the things that we do add to the momentum where we feel like we're running out of time. I feel like this is one of the, how should I call it? One of the things that is weighing us down as human beings, that we don't have time to do anything. We barely have time to take care of our being, to take care of ourselves. And the moment we slow down, just like you said, and we take some things off our doing list and we add a being list, like this is a concept that I've actually connected with recently, because I can be quite a workaholic as well. And for a long period of my life, I had like a long to-do list and I had to check all those things because that's how I would base my self-worth, based on the things that I would accomplish and do during a day. And in a conversation with a friend of mine, she spoke about this being list. And I was like, oh, wow, what is that? I need to learn more about this being list because it sounds good. This is something that I need to integrate. So actually, in these last months, I've started to focus on this being list as well, although I don't necessarily write it all down, but I set the intention that, okay, today I need to take time to be in this busy doing schedule. And I feel like this is something that we really need to start integrating for the benefit of our being, because it's so easy to overwork ourselves and to get lost in this carousel of time is money, like this is the paradigm of our society. You don't need to waste time because you're wasting resources, you're being an unproductive member of society and things like that. So going back to this beingness, I feel is another part of going back to our connection with nature. Because nature just is, there's no to-do list for nature. It just flows. And in my own experience, as I start focusing on being, this also helps me center myself and, find that stillness in order to be able to, let's say, be more creative in a sense in my doing list as well. So yeah, it's kind of like finding that balance inside of ourselves between the doing and always running after things and always, creating things, and just taking those moments to pause and breathe and reset and do things kind of like, well, doing things that don't have an end, like a goal that we need to tick off our list. Doing things that just bring joy to our soul, like, I don't know, singing, dancing, meditating, doing yoga, and things like that. So it's funny because you shared this at the beginning, because this has been my journey for the last months a lot, which is interesting because, I'm here talking about these concepts of time and things, and I found myself falling into this narrative of, I have this concept that time is infinite and time, the way we perceive it, is an illusion. But I still fell into this overproductiveness of society, and I had to kind of like get myself out of it and say, hey, wait, what are you doing? You need to realign with these things that you actually believe in. And this, was kind of like a reminder, if you will, of the programs that are operating unconsciously within us. And even if I consciously believe some certain things, I need to first unprogram all of that load of unconsciousness that we have been swimming in for the last hundreds of years as a society. So yeah.
And just to be clear, what are the programs there that you feel are embedded in our collective consciousness that aren't serving us?
Well, related to what we're talking now, this whole time is money, I think, is one big program that we need to let go of. The whole the need to be productive, the need to always do things in order to be a how should I say, a functional member of the society, a worthy member of the society. And well, the list would be very long with all of these unconscious programs. The notion that time is linear, the notion that we are disconnected from nature, the notion that it's okay to take resources from nature and not think of the consequences, the program that we are separated from one another, the concept that, our worth is based on the things that we produce. And I think I can go on and on because there's a lot of them, but I would say that these are kind of like the main ones specifically regarding to the conversation we just started.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
See, a lot of those programs that you've shared, you say it, and it's quite clear that they're programs that don't serve us, right? Our disconnection with nature and each other even. I don't think many yet see, because I'm only starting to see this again, thanks to you, how our perception of time and the calendar is actually at the root of that. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. Well, it's this whole idea that the Gregorian calendar is a very disharmonious and artificial calendar that takes in no consideration the natural cycles. It's not based on the lunar cycles, it's not based on the seasons, it's not based on the solstices or equinoxes. It's just, a calendar that started off with the Roman Empire. Its predecessor is the Julian calendar, and the day of the 1st of January, when the new year begins, that was the day when Rome would collect the taxes. That was the origin for the first day of the year. So I feel like this is that baseline for how we function mentally, in a sense, because the calendar that we used to be related to taxes. And, money and taxes are something that is a big part of our life currently as a society, where, just a few hundred years ago, like in certain parts of the world, there wasn't any concept of paying taxes. Paying taxes to who? There's that image of planet Earth seen from afar, and it's the question written above, like, who are we paying for our right to live on this planet? Who owns this planet in the end? So this is kind of like the foundation on which the calendar is built. And not only that, its very disharmonious structure does something to our mind, because, for example, in nature, everything is in perfect harmony. And so are the cycles of the seasons, so are the cycles of the moon, the cycle of day and night. It follows this very beautiful, harmonious progression where if we would just live in nature, by looking at the night sky, by looking at how the sun moves through the daytime sky, we get a feeling of where we are in that year, what time of the year it is, what month it is, what season it is, and also looking at our environment. So nowadays we are and plus the fact that we are living in cities with big buildings and we cannot even see the sky anymore, I sometimes get this feeling of being suffocated when I'm walking down the streets in the city.
Kind of like a cage. It's kind of like a cage.
Exactly. It's kind of like a cage. You cannot see the sky. When I walk outside and I see the moon because it's just at the right angle, I'm like, oh my God, yes, I'm seeing the moon tonight. How awesome. And, compared to when I spend some time in nature and I'm in a wide open space, I see the sun moving, the stars, it's like a completely different feeling. Being in this caged environment and living with this time frame that disconnects us from these harmonious cycles affects our mind in a way that we cannot really understand, because time, being the dimension of our mind, being something internal, how we perceive time influences how we perceive ourselves, how we perceive the world, how we perceive one another, and the relationship that we have with our environments. So because of all of this, having a calendar that disconnects us from the cycles of nature, this means that we end up disconnecting from ourselves, in this process. And this creates so much inner unbalance and chaos inside of our being that we don't even understand what's going on, because nobody actually talks to us about these things. I mean, in my opinion, this is something that we should be having conversations with children at a young age. For example, time and how we perceive time. What is time? What are we related to time? This, I feel, would change a lot of the paradigm the moment people start seeing time not as linear, but as something that is cyclical. And this is what I really appreciate about the Dreamspell Calendar. It is, in my opinion, the tool for training our mind to think in cycles within cycles, smaller and bigger. And as we open up our mind to this, it expands our consciousness on a level that we cannot really understand. We can only feel it as we start to experience it. It's hard to put into words because I feel that it's beyond words, beyond the limitation of words. And as we progress in this process of opening our mind to these endless cycles, we start expanding our awareness of ourselves as well, because our own being is going through these endless cycles. Like in a day, we can experience so many different cycles of our own being. In a month, in a year, we go through thinking of the cycles of nature, for example, how we have winter, spring, summer, autumn, which is kind of like a transition from death to rebirth to flowering and then death again. We can go through these cycles on a regular basis, even within a day, like I said, and it's really interesting when you start observing these things through this lens. And I'm always really excited when somebody that I, had a session with the calendar, or that participated in a workshop, that started writing to me about, how they start feeling that their mind is entering a different frequency, a different perception of themselves and the world. And it's, really beautiful to see this. And I've noticed on my own being how deeply it's changed me. Opening up my mind to all of these different units of time. And the Mayans were actually an incredibly advanced society simply through the fact that they had 17, 18 calendars that they used simultaneously. And, just the Tolkien calendar, which is their sacred galactic calendar of 260 days, that calendar has a bunch of cycles within itself. So, taking that and then other 17 calendars, it's amazing to be able to hold within our being so many different frequencies and units of time. This is why, I have like a deep admiration and respect for this culture, because what they've done is absolutely amazing from this point of view. And their incredible knowledge of not only the cycles happening on this planet, but also the cycles happening within our solar system. So yeah.
I'm hearing you share, and I feel myself opening up to this more expanded awareness and perception of time. I think as you've shared, it's kind of an experiential thing that as you begin to deprogram some of the programs that we spoke to, and you start to just kind of stay a little bit more open to this, you feel that shift in consciousness in your being. I think largely at the root of this is this shift between, at least from what I'm feeling, this shift from this linear concept of time to this more cyclical, like time is happening in cycles. But still there's this gripping onto, and I'm sure I'm not experiencing this alone, to this idea that, there's still moments happening after moments that in a bigger picture is creating this string of moments that happen in our concept of time. So I think where my attachment lies, and again, probably speaking for many, is this wanting to make the most of my time. Having a vision that I want to bring into fruition, right? Things I want to do in the world, and an impact that I want to have. And in order for me to do it, the concept, at least the program, is, well, the more time I spend taking actions towards that, right, the more progress I'm going to make. So how do we bring this upgraded awareness and understanding? What does that upgraded perspective have to say to me wanting to be as productive as I can be?
I don't feel like it contradicts this, because I totally resonate with what you're describing, this higher calling that people have, the desire to kind of like change something in this world, and this can make us really, it makes us push on, and having very high expectations from ourselves, like, no, we should be the one to do all the work because people are sleeping and we need to help them in this process. So it adds a lot of inner pressure, but I feel like it's still connected to what we were talking in the beginning about finding that balance, because yes, there's like, I love being a productive person. I actually feel very good when I accomplished this. I've reached my goal. I've manifested this, but then it's, taking those times to be, to breathe, to reset, to be nature, to simply tune into our inner world, because it is like we were talking, a very fast-paced rhythm that we're living in, which can actually be very destructive, even physically. Like, stress, for example, is one of the major causes of disease, and people who are always being overly productive are constantly stressed. I used to feel this in my body all the time, like this feeling that I need to do more, I need to do more. And then I would have like these moments of being where I'm like, Andra, you're like 30 years old. You've already done so many things throughout your life. Like, chill, take a break, relax a little bit, because it's not up to one person to change the world in that sense. It's more like a collective effort, the way I see it. And each person adds a brick to this, the foundation of a new beginning that we are all building together. So it's okay for, some of us to pause and reset. I feel like it's vital. And the more time has passed, the more I've come to appreciate this. If we would have had this conversation maybe 2 years ago, I would have been like, yeah, time is an illusion, but I need to be productive. So further down the road, as I started to feel a little bit anxious because of all of this endless productivity that I was pushing myself towards. And, in the relationship that I'm in, my partner, he's very connected to being, and it really helped me come into this frequency of, wait, I'm actually a workaholic right now, and this isn't beneficial for me. It's creating all sorts of tensions inside of my body and mental tensions as well. So I was fortunate to be able to attune to his frequency as well and get into this whole beingness more. So to answer your question, it's always about balance. I feel like with anything in life, really, and the interesting thing about this balance thing is that it's not one of those things that you reach the end of balancing, doing and being, and then it's done. It's a continuous process. And we might have moments where we fall again into that productivity, depending on what we're doing in a specific time, but then taking those times to be and reset and just breathe.
Yeah, and I also want to acknowledge that what that balance looks like in any given moment of time or chapter in our life might actually change. We might find ourselves in phases where we want to spend a little bit more time in that being energy, and same goes to that more doing. So I think you touched on some super, super important things, right? Because here we are kind of flying head on against the concept of time that many hold. But I don't think the idea is to fully let go of this wanting to be productive and make the most of our time, so to speak.
Definitely not. I mean, thinking about a time before the existence of the Gregorian calendar and things like that, people were productive even then as well. Like it's not something that contradicts this need, this human need to be a part of this world. And I feel like doing and producing things and creating art and building stuff, this is part of who we are as humans. This is how we express ourselves, how we manifest some of the wisdom that we carry within and share it with the world. So it's an important part of who we are. We cannot just, I mean, like some people can definitely stay in this beingness for prolonged periods of time, but I feel that, again, it's part of who we are as humans, this desire to be a part of the world and share who we are. And it's something very beautiful as well, if we do it from a place of inner peace and calmness, and not from the desire to prove ourselves or from this desire to accumulate more wealth and more things. No, it's like, okay, why are we being productive in the end? I think that's one of the key questions that we need to ask ourselves. Are we being productive because I need to get in line with the rhythm of society? Or am I being productive because I want to accumulate more wealth? Am I being productive because I want to prove something to someone that I'm a worthy member of society? Or am I being productive because this is me doing something that I love doing and sharing that with the rest of the world? So, yeah.
Knowing why we're doing it, as well as another thing you touched on, is really feeling how we're feeling through that. Because as you've shared there, right, you've had that chapter of wanting to be productive and enjoying that. There's a part of us that loves the feeling of getting things done and creating and making things happen. But then you notice that there was that anxiousness feeling that was happening beneath, and leaning into the being supported you in relieving that.
Yeah,
something I think we can all probably relate to. Yeah, there's one thing here. Okay, so I think we can all agree, right? There's that the desire to create, to express ourselves, and to have a positive impact, right? And I'm sure everyone practically listening to this show can relate to that. Now, what I'm trying to still figure out within myself, just in my own relationship to productivity and time, is how to use, or should I even use, something like a calendar and a schedule to support that.
So I'm a fan of structure. Like, I love writing down a list of the things I need to accomplish within a day. Let's say I set the intention of I'm writing down these things. So I'm still applying that. So this is based on how I deal with this. But I have allowed myself to be much more flexible with the to-do list, in the sense that before I used to, like, write down what I have to do in a day, and then I would go above and beyond to try to accomplish all of those things. Now it's more so like, I write down what I would like to do during that week, the things that I would like to accomplish. And then it's like, okay, I didn't accomplish this today, but, tomorrow is a day as well. So I'm trying to not add a mental pressure to the schedule that or my to-do list, to the schedule that I have for myself in that frame of time. And I feel like that has helped me relax a little bit more, and has allowed me to find that flow between doing and being, and not being hard on myself whenever I don't accomplish the things that I set out to accomplish in a week, knowing that, it's okay. Like, this is okay as well. The fact that I've taken time for myself, like, one of the reasons that we didn't have this recording earlier was because I was really honoring my body's need for rest. Like, sometimes I have periods where, even if I have like a super long to-do list scheduled for that week, I feel all of a sudden my body and my mood just going inward. We as women, fortunately, through our monthly cycles, we can access this a little easier. Like, for me, the first week of my menstrual cycle is always dedicated to tuning into the body and really listening and feeling, okay, how do I want to interact with the outside world in this week? And usually, if I am after a really productive phase in the weeks building up to the beginning of my menstrual cycle, in that week, my body is like shutting down, and it's like, nope, you just need to take it slow. And what's interesting is that in my workaholic phase, I wouldn't listen to the body. I would be like, oh, I'm not really in the mood to do anything today, but I'm going to do it because I need to do all the things in my to-do list. So I feel like listening to how my body's talking to me in the different cycles that I go through, again, has been a resource for me to really tune into the body and be like, okay, what do you need in this cycle, in this beginning of the cycle? Like I said, we women are a little bit more fortunate through sometimes actually the body doesn't give us a choice, and that's when we really need to pay attention. I've had experiences where at the beginning of my monthly cycle, it would be like total shutdown, sitting in the bed and not really wanting to interact with anything and anyone. And again, in the beginning, I was trying to fight that. But now it's more so, okay, I'm going to honor what my body needs at this moment. So yeah.
Do you ever feel like the to-dos and the preconceived intentions and decisions that we've set, do you ever feel like that distracts us from tuning into what body and even soul is calling for?
Definitely. I feel that it does. I've noticed this in myself, how I would just push myself to accomplish all the things in my to-do list, and really this made me ignore the body. So the moment that we fall more into that beingness, we have no choice but to attune to the body as well, or vice versa. The moment we actually start paying attention to the body, I feel like this helps us ease into the beingness. We as humans, I feel that we're very disconnected from our physical body. It's kind of like this contrast of, we are super identified with the physical body and this vessel, but we're in the same time extremely disconnected from it. Because if we were, we would change our lifestyle. We couldn't live in this, working 5 hours a week from 9 to 6 and then crashing in the weekends because we're so low on energy and things like that. We couldn't function if we would actually listen to the body. Sometimes I joke around with friends that I don't think I would be able to get a job in that sense with the way that I've started to tune into my body, because maybe I have a job and one day I just don't feel like going to the office because today my body is asking me to slow down. I think that goes without saying that I wouldn't stay in that job for a very long time because of this. So yeah, I feel that the moment we start attuning to the body, this also opens the door for us to attune with the soul as well, the body being the vessel for the soul, and the body having this incredible wisdom and language that actually helps us connect with the soul and understand what the soul is trying to communicate to us. This is why, there was this saying in a documentary, I don't remember who said it, but it's kind of like, we're not living longer, we're just dying slower because of the fact that we are ignoring the needs of our body and all of the messages it's trying to send to us. And lately, I've been meeting a lot of young people my age, like in their 30s, that have all sorts of illnesses, like chronic illnesses, things that in our parents' generation, they would come a little bit later. But nowadays, people are so stressed because of this fast-paced rhythm where we cannot afford the luxury to tune into the body, because if we were, like I said, we wouldn't have a place in society and in our job and things like that. So I feel like this is why it's really essential to start tuning into the body. And like I said, I feel this opens a doorway for us to move even beyond the body.
So you mentioned there kind of, the structure of the 9-to-5 job, and I feel like that's a entirely different conversation altogether for those that are within it. You and I are fortunate enough to not be in it by the sounds of it. As well as I feel like a lot of people, at least in my field, I'm feeling a lot of people making the transition to not being constrained to that sort of circumstance. So I do want to kind of speak to that audience, as well as just my own genuine curiosity, because I'm in it as well. So, I agree that sometimes our mental concepts and ideas for what needs to be done and how much we want to accomplish can distract us from tuning into this and body and soul and what is wanted from a higher perspective. And that's why it's felt so great for me to kind of let go a little bit, as I was talking about earlier, let go a little bit of those attachments. I still am pretty structured in my intentions, like here's what I want to get done for the day, but just for the last week, let's say I've been less rigid, less rigid in this is when it needs to get done, and even less rigid in it has to get done, which is very unlike me. I can't help but wonder in how much relief I'm feeling in my being and how much more relaxing it's feeling. I can't help but wonder, could it be possible that if I were to just strip away all of that and just focus entirely on tuning into self, tuning into body, tuning into soul, and making my decisions in alignment with my own inner guidance, could I be just as productive in my intentions and my aims by simplifying it to that practice?
I believe so. I feel like the more we take the time to tune in to ourselves, this has repercussions on how we interact with the world, how we do things, how we go about our day. And in my own experiences, the more I started to, take the time and not move in this, not run on the treadmill, so to say, this has helped me be more clear, more focused mentally, more clear on the direction that I want to go with a specific project that I'm doing, more clear about how I can achieve a certain goal on my to-do list, even more creative. I do feel that this tuning into myself is helping me, tune in more with my creativity, with my resourcefulness as well, and just bringing in a sense of calmness that, again, it's about why we're being productive. And when we're being productive from that state of there's nothing to run after, I'm not being productive because I'm running after something, I'm being productive because this feels good for me to do and I want to accomplish these things, it changes. And today being a yellow sun day, this is actually what this archetype of the yellow sun is about, asking us to take things slow and to enjoy simply being, and realizing that the only thing to do is to bring more of ourselves to the world, more of our essence, to allow more of our light to shine. And as we tune in, this is what naturally happens. More of who we are comes to the surface, and it gets imprinted into everything that we are doing, which just makes what we're doing that much more beautiful, that much more impactful on the people that are receiving the gifts that we are sharing.
The word impactful dropped in for me precisely at the same time as you. When we're acting from that place of pure presence and inspiration, I find that that's the most powerful action we can actually take. I still can't help but wonder, I might play around with it just to experience it with myself, how much letting go of the preconceived decisions and intentions might support me in more consistently expressing that. Yeah. There's something else I know I want to touch on, but I want to just check in with if I'm ready for it. Okay, I think I know where I want to go. So speaking to someone like myself that's fortunate enough to have aligned with a lot of support with the circumstances of just kind of being free, free in how I spend my time, free from a job that I have to report to, like quite literally because of my circumstances, I can spend my time how I want to spend it. So someone like me that, of course, still again has big dreams that I want to fulfill, but has that freedom. How do you? What's your suggestion for say my transition in being less? I feel resonant with this idea of the Gregorian calendar being at the root of disharmony, and to the point of like I'm opening up to the idea of that someday I'm not going to use that at all. Well, first, would you agree that getting to that point is best for us in humanity?
Definitely. Like this is, part of my work and part of what I'm talking to people. Sometimes I actually don't know the day in the Gregorian calendar. I'm on the Dreamspell frequency and I have to calculate what day is it in. Well, actually, it's easy because I can just check the phone, but sometimes I'm like, I don't know what date it is. Let me think about the date in the Dreamspell calendar, and then I can tell you what's in the Gregorian. So I really do feel that this is something that we can totally exclude from our lives, the Gregorian calendar, and actually bring forth as a society this harmonious calendar, which allows us to be aligned with the natural world all around us and with our own inner being. So yeah, definitely. I really hope and believe in a future where we are all aligned to this frequency of this harmonious calendar, because this is really going to, the way I see it, I feel that it's going to be an opening for a very big shift to start happening. Because, think about it. If everybody's attuned to the harmonious frequency of this calendar system, or, in the end, it's about any calendar system that is aligned to the cycles of nature. But, the Dreamspell being the tool that I chose to work with, this is the one that I'm going to be talking about. So imagine all the collective of this planet being attuned to this harmonious calendar, how it's going to open up our consciousness and our minds and our perceptions about the world and one another. I've really noticed some incredible shifts in people that have been consistent in this work of realigning with the frequency of nature, because this is what it's about through this calendar. So I really hope that at one point it's going to, the Gregorian calendar is going to be a forgotten memory in our collective on this planet, so that we can indeed be part of nature, not separated from it. And I think you wanted to continue with another question.
Yeah, I do. But now you've also opened up another one. Well, I just want to share that the feeling that I get when I hear you speak to this, as being a fairly intuitive individual, to me that's just a sign to pay attention, because I can feel myself just open up and expand it. There's something happening in this being that's saying pay attention. So before we talk about how to make this transition, and there's a reason why I use the word transition. Let's first sell them on the benefits. You mentioned you've experienced some or seen some amazing shifts in others even. So it's one thing I think to speak to the benefits we've experienced in ourselves, and I would love to hear about that as well. But maybe even tying into that, the what sort of shifts you've seen in not just yourself but other people, from aligning with a more harmonious calendar.
Well, the first main one that I've seen in other people and in myself is this expansion of the way my mind works. What I was saying about the whole cycles within cycles that this calendar has, that really it makes us be able to observe things happening on very many different levels, when we can hold different units of time in our consciousness. And this makes us pay much more attention to what is happening inside of us and how things in our inner world shift in this cyclical rhythm. And also, people tend to tune in more, because this is how I kind of present people to start working with this calendar. In the beginning, it's all about observing, tuning in, see how a specific day interacts with you, how the frequency of a specific archetype interacts with you. So it's kind of like an introspective process, simply starting to follow this calendar. If you're doing it properly, so to say, because it's not just about, learning how it works. It's about how it interacts with you, because the magic is it interacts differently with everybody. Obviously, there are similarities, and they're each of the 20 archetypes of the Dreamspell calendar have specific themes, but each person can access different themes, because it's a really complex archetypal image that they carry. It's not just defined by one quality or one specific aspect. It's a bunch of them. And because of this, each of us, based on the level of awareness that we have, based on the shadows that we're still working on, the unconscious programs that we are trying to deprogram ourselves from, we're all going to interact differently with the calendar. And I feel like this is part of the magic, because it really helps us tune into what is going on within, what is happening in my life, in my being, in my body, in my consciousness, and how can I align more with myself by learning how to understand all of these different cycles and all of these different archetypal constructs that interact with us. And also, it's like we begin to understand ourselves more deeply as we start attuning to the Dreamspell calendar and we start following the energy of each day, because it's like a fountain of resources and knowledge and wisdom. Like, I cannot even begin to describe how much I have changed, who I am as an individual, and how my mind works, how I see the world, how I see other people. It's kind of like given me a much deeper understanding of the world I live in and the different cycles that people go through. I am able to now observe the cycles that a person is in based on, you know, how I interact with all of these energies. And I can be like, I know where you are and I feel where you are, and, you know, it's okay. And it's part of a transition and a process that we're going through. Plus, synchronicity becomes, you know, just like the nature of our reality when we start tuning into this calendar, because it gives us a new language that we can use to be able to see synchronicity on a much deeper level. It has been a joy for me to be on this journey and to observe how the more a person is aligned with their soul, the more they are aligned to the Dreamspell calendar, and they have no aware, they're not aware of it. They don't even know about the Dreamspell calendar. And it's always that excitement for me to be able to point out these things like, hey, you know, these things that we were just talking and all the things that you are doing, you're super in alignment with this galactic calendar. And you know, synchronicity, the way I see it, is something that starts to unfold the moment we begin connecting with who we really are. And we strip away the layers of this artificial matrix that we're living in. And we start pulling over the veil and looking what is beyond it. And that's when synchronicity starts to enter into our lives. So yeah, these are some of the things that I've been observing in people around me. And also it changes how you, well, for me anyway, it's been very interesting to see how it changes how I interact with people, because, well, I've kind of dedicated a big portion of my time and in these last years to learning how all of the different archetypes of the calendar work. What are their light and shadow aspects? And then I am able to look at people and see them through this lens, which helps me to, let's say, not take things so personally and not make it about me, because I can kind of like see where that person is on their journey. And, you know, we have a tendency as human beings to make it all about us. Like if somebody does something to us, you know, it's about us, but it's actually about where the person is on their journey. And it has been very healing for me to be able to see things from this perspective, not to see them from, oh, I'm a victim of this person and they're horrible and things. No, they're just on their journey and through this transition from the shadow into the light, which is one of the philosophies behind this calendar. Each archetype, and I feel like this is also where I should mention that each of us, based on the day we're born, we're more sensitive to certain archetypes that manifest internally, and they have light and shadow aspects, and we kind of plunge into the shadow because of the way society functions and the fact that we're not supported to be our beautiful shining self. We're pressured into becoming who others want us to become, and that's when the shadow gets created. So we're kind of all of us on this journey of transitioning from the shadow aspects into the light. And I feel like this again is a lot about balance.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really trust people who say things like, I'm healed, I have integrated my shadow, I have obliviated my ego, and I'm like just this perfect individual, and I have nothing to work on. I'm always cautious when I hear something like this from an individual, because I feel like this is, a constant journey of balancing. It's like a dance, the dance of the yin and yang that happens internally. And it's not like the shadow goes away and it just disappears, because it's the balance of daytime and nighttime. It's the balance between the two that sets things in motion. And I feel like this is a process that we go through as individuals, finding that balance between becoming aware of the shadow and knowing it's there, and knowing how to kind of keep it in check and transmute it into the light aspects of our being in this process. I feel like I've kind of like gone on a completely different direction since the question you last asked, but it's okay.
It all matters. It all matters. Okay, so a lot of what you're sharing is it's intellectual in its understanding, and I can see how your study of the calendar has supported you in your process, how applying your knowledge around it has supported you in your process. Is there a degree to which we can use the calendar, let's say for someone that may not want to devote as much time to, or isn't feeling as called to devote as much time to the intellectual understanding of it? Is there a kind of level to it where we can still use it to attune to harmony and to nature and to ourselves without necessarily going as deep into the knowledge?
Definitely. I mean, like, it's simply following it and taking the time to pay attention to how each energy, I mean, like, it's not something, okay, yes, intellectually, we can understand the different archetypes in this way based on a list of characteristics. But something that I always tell people at the workshops that I do is, after you receive this information from me, forget everything and then find your own way of adding meaning to these archetypes. Because something that, again, I really enjoy is interacting with people who maybe don't actually know so much about the calendar, but they say something about a specific archetype and how they see it, which I'm like, okay, I'm going to steal that and I'm going to add it on my list, because it was so beautiful and powerful how you expressed this concept and how you feel this energy. So the way I recommend to people how they should proceed when learning how to connect with this calendar is, see how you feel that energy. You don't need to know what it's about. First of all, it's about what it is to you. And when looking at how, because all of the archetypes are like represented through different glyphs. And these glyphs are not like hieroglyphs, which just through a symbol, they depict a word or a phrase. No, they like tell a story through the symbols that the archetypes carry. So even the archetypes themselves, their image is imprinted with so much wisdom and all sorts of codes. In the beginning, when I was starting to integrate the calendar for myself, I would spend, I don't know, the morning, a few minutes each morning looking at the glyphs of this calendar and just trying to feel that energy. Well, I'm also quite a mental person, so the mind would kick in to try to kind of like put into words whatever I was feeling and give it a context. But in the end, it's about tuning into that energy beyond any rational understanding and seeing how it interacts with us.
Okay. This is all perfectly answering the question I had before, and I'm still going to ask it. But just to kind of sum up and check if I'm understanding correctly. at a very kind of introductory level into it, it can be as simple as checking in with the archetype of the day and making note of how we've interacted with the energy of the day, and over time documenting that.
Yeah,
Okay,
exactly.
awesome. Okay, so my question was around this transition, right? Kind of again just reiterating the context of my life. I have the freedom to not really have to engage with the Gregorian calendar, with the exception of perhaps scheduling a podcast interview like this, right? Which I'm also going to ask about, because I'm wondering how would one do so without the Gregorian calendar. So, I'm open. What is your suggestion to someone that is at least willing to give this a shot and has the freedom and flexibility to, if need be, kind of completely let go of the Gregorian calendar, with the exception of, not the exception, but with noting that something like scheduling meetings or calls or podcast interviews is something that would still need to be done?
Uh, well, for people that have the freedom is it's a little bit more easier because you don't have that structure of the week in the sense that the Gregorian calendar brings it forth with Monday to Sunday and things like that, and you're kind of like embedded into the system whether you want it or not, which is what happens for most of us. And for people that have the freedom, it's a tiny bit easier, though. Even for people within the Gregorian calendar system, I mean, like people that are kind of like constrained by their circumstances to be a part of it and they cannot disconnect from it completely, it's like they can do it as well. I feel like learning how to connect with the Dreamspell calendar isn't something that becomes difficult if we still follow the Gregorian calendar, because like you said, I'm also a person that, I cannot tell people like, hey, I'm going to meet you on a yellow resonance Sunday or things like that. They wouldn't have any idea what I'm talking about. So I do have to translate into the codes of the Gregorian calendar to be able to function in this society, because otherwise I'm just me on a completely different frequency and maybe some other thousands of people following the Dreamspell calendar. But the steps to start integrating it, and I also have all of these resources through the videos that I do. I write them down there. There's pictures online that we can, because the Dreamspell calendar contains 2 calendars within it. One of them is the 13 moon calendar, which is aligned to the lunar cycles, which aren't the same thing as the lunar phases. I wanted to point that out because many people are a little bit confused by that. And it has 28 days per month, 13 months. Each month of 28 days is actually divided into 4 weeks, 7 days each. But the 7 days of the week, actually, there's a purpose for them being 7, because it's the movement through the main chakras of our body. It's not just random and things like that. Nothing in this calendar is. So it's like, pictures that people can download and even print them out and have them somewhere, either on their laptop or printed out, put on somewhere at their desk or their wall, and they can check. The 30 moon calendar is actually correlated to the dates of the Gregorian calendar, so it's very easy to use and to check between the two. Okay, today, what day is it in the Gregorian calendar? Let me see what day it's in the 30 moon calendar. So this one is a little bit more simple. But the other calendar, which is the Tzolk'in, considered to be the sacred calendar for the Mayans, it has 260 days. So for this one, it's a little bit about finding, so like there's different apps that people can use to check what energy it is today in the Tzolk'in calendar. There are websites. I don't know, maybe I can send you like the links and then you can put them down. Okay. And from here, it's like I said, the process of paying attention. I mean, like nowadays with technology, one of the benefits of it is that this information can be accessed much more easier than it was a few tens of years ago. Like 20 years ago, you had to like calculate, like writing down to calculate the dates and correlate them to the Dreamspell calendar. If you didn't know the count, it was more difficult. But now we have all of these resources that just, this is the energy of today, and this is what it might be about. Okay, let's see how I personally interact with this energy. So, for anybody wanting to take these steps, well, first of all, I would recommend to watch some of my videos to kind of like get an introduction, or to go on to the Law of Time website, lawoftime.org, which is actually the foundation created by Jose Arguelles and his wife Loidine, who are the people that brought the Dreamspell calendar into the attention of the public and started to promote it very intensely. He was actually the one that wrote the book, The Mayan Factor, where he spoke about the date of 2012, the 21st of December, and how it was meant to be the ending of the cycle. Obviously, the media took that and distorted it into, the world is going to end and things like that. But the foundation is still functioning even after his death. So that's another amazing place for resources, where you have articles and PDF books that people can download to kind of start to comprehend the philosophy behind this calendar and why it's relevant for us to speak about changing the calendar. Because sometimes when I tell people what I do, I always get a kick when people ask me, so what do you do, Andra? Oof, how much time do you have? And
changing the calendar.
I'm changing the calendar. I'm trying to put this awareness that we need to change the calendar. And people are like, why? Like, why would we need to change the calendar? Like, what's the point of it all? But, we know what the point of it all is, since as we've been talking up until this point. And yeah, it's first of all, I feel that the person needs to have the curiosity to start tuning into this. And then it's a process of being patient with ourselves and again, something interesting that I've noticed with people that I've been working with, almost everybody, I think, has connected with a calendar in the past. They started to look into it, but they didn't really stick with it. And then it came back a few years after that. And this is about the magic of the calendar in a way, because this is how it happened to me. In 2012, I came in contact with it. I didn't have the patience, the awareness, the understanding. I was deep into my shadows. So obviously I couldn't really access what the calendar was about, really. And it was 5 years after being connected with this calendar that I had my aha moment and a huge synchronicity that made me understand that this is huge. And this is something, like you were saying, I think a little bit earlier, about how it resonates in the body. For me, connecting with a calendar was like this expansion of the body, and everything I was reading, I was feeling it on a molecular level. I was feeling the cells within my body being like, yes, this is it. Like, this is where I should be putting my attention and energy towards, because it really resonated, not just intellectually. I could feel it resonated physically. And that was for me very profound. It was like a confirmation that I've never received up until that point, to actually feel the confirmation within the body that like, yes, this is the direction I need to be going towards.
That's a very simple question after that super elaborate and deep answer. Is time tracked? Like hours within the day? Is there units within a day that is being measured?
Sorry, can you
are there units within a day using this calendar that's being tracked and measured? And the reason why I ask is, again, if I were to have to meet someone at a particular time, is it possible to set up that time for it with the use of this calendar?
If both people are
Right,
following
exactly.
the calendar, yeah,
Yes.
definitely.
Okay.
It can be like we either express a date in the 13 moon calendar that we want to meet, or a date in the Tolkien calendar that we want to connect, and things like that. So if both people are following the Dreamspell calendar, yes. Like, I actually, whenever I have a friend that I know is working with the calendar, I'm gonna tell him the date in the Dreamspell calendar. Otherwise, I usually express the Gregorian calendar to people to be sure that there's no misunderstanding or things like that. Yeah.
I have a feeling our next podcast episode is going to have to be scheduled on it. I have a feeling you're not going to let me do anything otherwise, which would be supportive, because I have to say I'm feeling pretty sold. And I think the best thing that myself or anyone can do, for that matter, is to at least give it a shot and begin to play with it and see. I just want to point out that I'm in a very unique position, and I think there are listeners that are as well, that have that freedom, that flexibility. That, well, actually, another interesting thing that you really mentioned was how it doesn't become more difficult to use it and to attune with it while still kind of operating with the Gregorian calendar. I found that really interesting. But I can feel myself wanting to, like, at least experiment with leaning a little bit away from the Gregorian calendar and seeing how that plays out, and still probably like you've shared, having to interact with so many others that aren't using the dream spell or are still using the Gregorian. There will be still some need, I think, during this transition to utilize it. But I'm really excited for what sort of shifts might take place in being even less attached to these disorganized measures of time. And I want to thank you again for introducing it to me. Many of these concepts. There's one question. I have to ask it. Yeah, I'm gonna ask it. Well, do you feel complete on that trajectory? Is there anything else that you might want to share?
Yeah. I feel complete.
Okay. I don't think we'll have too much time, ironic, to dive into it, but I just want to hear you share. What's the noosphere?
The noosphere. So, it's like the collective consciousness on one hand, that is actually composed of the minds of all the human beings on this planet. And the noosphere is a little bit more planetary. I mean, it doesn't just contain the collective consciousness. It contains the planetary collective consciousness that includes animals, plant life, minerals, crystals, and all of these things. So it's kind of like we can see it like the Earth's mental sphere, in a sense, that contains all life. And part of the philosophy of Jose Arguelles is, and the reason that he was really promoting calendar change, I think he actually petitioned the Vatican and things like that for calendar change. And he wasn't the only person. I remember, I don't remember the name of the person right now, but when I was researching a few years back, there was, I think in the 90s, somebody that actually petitioned for a transition to the 13 moon calendar. Anyway, the idea of Jose Arguelles is that the moment we start attuning collectively to the frequency of nature, because this is another part of, the whole Dreamspell calendar, it is attuned to the frequency that all of nature is functioning within. And as we start reattuning to that, we start harmonizing with the natural world, then the noosphere begins to become conscious, because right now we are deeply in the unconsciousness as a collective. We are so consumed by all of this unconscious programming operating in the background. And the noosphere is kind of like well, the activation of the noosphere is the moment we start to become aware of who we are. We start to become aware of our interconnection that we have with nature and all of the natural world. And I feel like that is the next point in our evolution as a collective, where by harmonizing with ourselves and with one another and with nature, we become like this super conscious organism where, the planet is alive anyway, and it's waiting for us to catch up with this understanding that it's alive and it wants to interact with us. Like maybe some of the people listening have had experiences where they've actually interacted with the natural forces of the earth. I truly believe that this is something possible. I truly believe that at the moment where our consciousness expands to such awareness, and I mean this collectively, not just you and me, not just 100 people, the whole of 7 billion souls attuned to this, it's like we become this incredibly complex organism. And we are connected like telepathically to one another, to animals, to nature. And this is, I feel, where the magic begins. I feel like this is the next stage in our evolution as a collective. It's not about one individual becoming enlightenment or some. It's about all of us together reattuning to the harmonious frequency of the earth and interacting with it. And I feel like from that point, we're talking about global warming and things like that, and the destruction of our natural environment. 7 billion souls consciously attuned to this, like we can change the forces of the earth, we can clean the waters, we can clear the air, we can take out all the toxins from the soil just through the power of our intentions and, mind over matter and things like that. So I feel like, this is a really deep topic that we've launched ourselves into, and I'm going to stop there because then we're going to keep going for another hour.
Yeah, and I still think that even with that snippet, it was just the perfect way to bring this all together, because it speaks to, by the sounds of it, we aren't going to activate the noosphere being attached to the Gregorian calendar.
At least not being attached to this dysfunctional mechanism of society and this disconnection from nature. Yeah, so that means with the Gregorian calendar in our life. Yeah.
Yeah, and I understand that there might be a little bit of like a hesitance to kind of throw it at people like that right off the bat. But between us, I kind of already feel the trajectory of our evolution, and I'm feeling that full body resonance here right now. So I'll say it again. I know that means something, and I just want to thank you for all the work that you're doing, not necessarily just around bringing the Dreamspell calendar into the world, but supporting us in coming back into harmony.
Oh, my pleasure, for sure.
I have one last question for you. It's kind of the grand finale. But before that, let's take a moment to just share where someone can find out more about you or learn more about your work.
So I think the main platform would be my YouTube channel, Dreamspell Calendar Explained. And there I have like a bunch of resources for people who don't know anything about it to be able to take the baby steps to learning about it, starting with my older videos, working their way up to the new ones. Also a Facebook page, Galactic Signature Decoding Sessions, I think.
We'll link it. We'll link
it.
We'll
link it. But yeah, on my YouTube and my Facebook page is where people can contact me. I also have my email written down in all of my videos. So I really encourage people, and I love whenever somebody comes up with questions and the desire to know more about this calendar. So I'm quite available for people who want all of these different resources. I also have a bunch of PDF books. So anybody interested can write me an email, and I'm going to happily forward them these PDF books. So yeah, that would be like the main ways for people to contact me and get to know more of the work that I'm doing.
Sessions with you?
Oh yeah, and yeah, definitely individual sessions I offer for people where first it's about getting to know who they are through the lens of the Dreamspell Calendar. Like I mentioned earlier, based on the day that each of us is born, we are connected to a specific kin being the Mayan word to describe a day or a person born on a specific day, which it gives us a lot of insights about our light and shadow aspects and the path that our soul has chosen to walk within this lifetime. I also sometimes organize online workshops for people to be able to go with me on a journey of learning the basics of how to start following and applying the Dreamspell Calendar. Yeah, so kind of like that.
Ready for the grand finale question?
I'm ready.
I'm going to ask it like I've never heard before. We've just activated the noosphere because, Andra, you've just actualized the ability to telepathically communicate to all of humanity. What do you say?
Oof, feeling a lot of pressure right now. No, I'm joking. But yeah, I believe that this whole activation of the noosphere is a process that started to unfold in 2012 by interacting with a lot of people. That's when things started to shift for a lot of them. I know for me personally as well, it was a big shift. And ever since then, it's like the more people start to have these aha moments of what the noosphere is, I feel like the doorway towards its activation get wider and wider, and then it's easier for other people to start attuning to that frequency. So yeah, I'm happy that through this conversation, I've been able to maybe open the doorway a little bit more towards this.
Thank you again, Andra, for your time, pun intended, and yeah, for again just being in service to humanity, to our collective, and all the amazing work that you're doing and sharing. I appreciate it.
My pleasure, and thank you again for this opportunity and this very delightful exchange.
I'll see you soon. Senders, that is going to be all for my conversation with Andra. I hope you had a good time. Huh? You see what I did there? I said time, right? Anyways, if you are also feeling this call to deepen in this exploration and this study of time, perhaps the Dreamspell Calendar, I invite you to go check out Andra's amazing YouTube channel. She has so many in-depth and insightful videos, and then perhaps checking out some of the other resources that she's mentioned, such as the Law of Time Foundation or some of those apps that she touched on, which all will be linked to in the show notes to this episode. And for those of you that will see the value in continuing this exploration together, well, you can be sure that this and so many other topics that can support you in accelerating your ascension process is what we'll be talking about in the Ascend Academy. Once again, Ascenders, we have a free membership to join us in our community and on our platform, as well as our activated one, giving you access to live sessions with some of these amazing teachers that you see joining us on the show, as well as our members community, other Ascenders that you can connect with and learn from. If this is at all calling for you and you're feeling the resonance here, I invite you to head on over to academy.togetherweascend.com to activate your membership and become part of our community. Anyways, Ascenders, that is going to be it for this episode of Awaken. I want to thank you for watching, for being here, for being who you are. And until next time, keep ascending.